President Biden is in the midst of his first trip to Asia since taking office. It's a 4-day visit to South Korea and Japan. This morning, he met with South Korea's new president, Yoon Suk-yeol, and the two leaders said that they would be willing to resume joint military exercises to deter the nuclear threat from North Korea. NBC's Carol Lee is traveling with the president, and she joins me now from Seoul. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Katie.
Carol, can you tell us how things are going over there in terms of the energy and in terms of the dynamic between President Biden and the meeting that he's been having in South Korea?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, the president talked a lot about North Korea in the press conference earlier today. Both presidents, President Yoon and President Biden, called on North Korea to denuclearize. That's not something North Korea has shown any signs of even willing to discuss doing. The administration has reached out a number of times, according to administration officials, to see if there was interest on behalf of North Korea in negotiations over its nuclear program, and has gotten no response. And what we heard from President Biden today was that he's willing to meet with Kim Jong-un if Kim Jong-un was serious and sincere, those are the president's words, about negotiations toward denuclearization. Again, no signs that that is the case. And the other issue that came up with North Korea is the COVID outbreak that is happening in North Korea. And President Biden said that he, in the U.S., has offered vaccines to North Korea. They have not gotten a response. He also said that he offered those vaccines to China to see if China would be able to give them to North Korea. Again, not any response there. So there's this discussion among the South Koreans and the U.S. about possibly expanding those military exercises, both the scope and scale, according to a joint statement from them after their meeting. So that's another thing to look for. And then they also discussed economic issues, and a number of steps have been taken there. The president was highlighting some South Korean companies bringing jobs and factories into the U.S. to create jobs there to deal with supply chains, an issue the president is calling economic security, in addition to their traditional military security. So all of this is wrapping up tomorrow here in South Korea. The president heads to Japan, and there it'll be the same topics: North Korea, the economy, as well as Ukraine. The president's having a meeting with the leaders of Australia, Japan, and India, where Ukraine is going to be front and center as well.
Carol, is there any palpable concern that North Korea may try to flex its military capabilities while President Biden is on South Korean soil?
Yeah, absolutely, Katie. And that's been something that the administration has been saying in the run-up to the president's arrival here in South Korea since he's arrived here. And it's not going to end when he leaves and flies to Japan. They say that there's also still a concern that North Korea could launch a nuclear test or launch an intercontinental ballistic missile test, something along those lines, or anything that would be seen as provocative. What we've heard from administration officials, including National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, is that the U.S. was prepared, along with its allies, to respond. They said they know how they will respond and that they will do so in coordination with those allies. But that is a significant concern among administration officials until the president leaves this region.